Hey guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. I'm sorry I missed yesterday, and I have an explanation for what happened. But before I get into that, we are going to be talking about Modifier 50 today. So I think when it comes to the modifiers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one modifier to talk about at a time. Because if you talk about multiple modifiers, it can get overwhelming. And at least this way, if you guys have any questions about a particular modifier, we can address them on each video and it'll be more organized. So, yeah, that's coming up. So I gotta tell you guys what happened yesterday. So what happened was, and I have to rewind, okay, from yesterday. So actually, I'm gonna start on Tuesday. So what had happened was, Tuesday, I was working with a PA student, okay? She came over, she had lots of questions, so we sat there and we were going over some slides and I was talking with her and we were just discussing medical coding. And this is my favorite part of my job. I love doing one-on-ones. I love talking with people when it comes to medical coding, particularly new providers and new people that are getting into the field, because when you foster those good relationships and their first impression of a medical coder is a good one, that is a good thing, because sometimes some people don't have those positive experiences with medical coders, because either their coders are away from them, or they just don't have chance to like meet with the people. So I like to do that. It's like I said, it's my favorite thing. So it had started in the morning with her, and it was just really, really busy in the morning. And so I had her, and then I had some people stopping in to ask questions, and then I just had some people stopping by just to say hello. Now I have my own office. This is my own space, and I'm the only one with a key to the door. And I'm sitting here with her, and we're talking about all these things and different scenarios and things, because she did have a lot of questions. So I was cool with it, and but I was able to catch up at the end of the day with everything that I needed. So I met my quota, and I was able to send queries, and everything had just worked out. I mean, so I was just like, okay, cool, And then I looked at, my desk. I was like, oh my gosh, it just looks like a tornado hit it, because I had all this stuff all over my desk. And it is okay, because it may look messy to other people, but at that moment, it was perfectly organized, because I had everything where I needed it to be. So I said, okay, I'm just going to start again tomorrow. So I put everything away, and I closed my door, locked it, and I left, for the day. So then yesterday morning, I get into work, and I said, okay, I'm going to start and get everything going. And I start setting up and everything. And then I look over on my desk, and I spot this religious medal. It's like a coin, and it has a Proverbs verse on it, and I'll read it to you guys. It says, Proverbs 28:1, wicked flee when no man pursueth, but the righteous are bold as a lion. So I was like, wow, that's really sweet. It's like, I've never gotten anything like that before. That's like really nice. And so I was just like, of course I have to find out who gave this to me, And I had two prime suspects, because when you think of something as nice and thoughtful as that, your mind tends to go to people that you know. And so I was like, okay. So I asked the first one that I thought it could be, and he said, he looked at me like I had three heads, and he was like, no, it wasn't me. That's really cool, though. It's a really cool gift. But no, it wasn't me. And I was just like, So I went and I asked the other person, and they said, no, that's a really nice idea, and that's a really awesome gift somebody left you, but no, it wasn't me either. And so I was just like, well, shoot, who is it, So of course I'm asking everybody, and of course nobody knows nothing, And I'm thinking, I don't know who gave me this, but whoever it is, I guess thinks that I'm brave, because when I read this proverb, I think that means bravery. So I was like, wow, that's really thoughtful and very touching. I don't know who left it. I close my door during the day when I leave my office. I don't leave anything out that's unsecure. You know what I mean? Like, everything is secure before I leave my office. If I have to go run down to the refrigerator or whatever, I don't leave any records out. Everything's put away. And I mean, I don't have anything in my office to steal. So it's just, I just close the door. I just don't see a need to lock it. If I'm in a secure area, why do I need to lock it? And so I'm like, okay, well, it could have been there Tuesday and I didn't notice it. I mean, it had to have been there Tuesday because Wednesday morning was when I saw it. And I was just like, I don't I mean, I don't know what to say. I'm like, I'm just gonna take my own advice and just go with it. Because unless somebody rats themselves out, and I guess I'm just gonna have to live with a mystery, because that was a very nice thing for somebody to leave, but I guess they don't want to be found out. So I will just enjoy this coin. And so I'm like, okay, but anyway, so that's my story. And then yesterday, with all that, the hubbub of the coin and everything, and trying to find out who this mystery person is, I was outside too, and it was just so hot, and I'm just not used to the heat anymore. It's like 100 degrees out, and like literally, it's not feel 100 degrees. It is like registering as 100 degrees. So it's just like, and I'm not used to this heat. So I'm like, okay. So I just came home yesterday and I just fell asleep. So I just didn't film yesterday, and like I didn't really know what to think, about this coin. I'm like, okay, well, thank you, whoever gave it to me, but I mean, I don't, like, I wish I could thank the person, because it's really, really thoughtful, really very nice. So I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, like I said, that's my story. And so let's go ahead and get into the modifiers. So modifiers tell us a lot of things with just two characters, okay? Because sometimes with your fingers and your toes, you have different. You have a modifier for each, right? And they are a letter and a number. And some modifiers are just numbers. And some modifiers are just letters. So when it comes to knowing, and today we're talking about modifier 50. So when it comes to knowing when to put on a modifier, if you're not working with an encoder, right? The best way is to first review the section in the CPT book about the modifiers, okay? And when you do that, just read them, and number two, there is plenty of websites on the web about modifiers that some go into deeper discussion, because like as I said, I've not worked with all the modifiers before, because I just haven't had the opportunity. In some instances it's just different settings that apply to those modifiers. But the best way is by looking at the description of the code, because that's going to tell you what's going on, right? So when I'm thinking of that, the first code that comes to mind is the Botox injections, right? For the migraines, the chemo denervation is called 64615. In that code, it specifically states that it is a bilateral code, okay? When it states that it is a bilateral code, or there's bilateral in there anywhere, you do not put a 50 modifier, because then you're overcoding, okay? Because it's already telling you in the description of the code that this is a bilateral code, okay? So no 50 modifier on that one. But you may think, well, Blue, when am I gonna, when do I add a 50 modifier? So one of the codes that comes to mind is 20610, which is the arthrocentesis or injection of a major joint, okay? That code can get a 50 modifier. It can also get a right or a left modifier. It just depends. But if the injection is done bilaterally, you're going to use a 50 modifier. Okay, you're not going to use right and left. Don't ever do that. Don't be one of those people that does that. That does right and left. If it is done bilaterally, use a 50. Okay, if the code permits. But then you may have codes that specifically state that this is a unilateral code, like 64616, which is a Botox injection of the neck muscles, and this is unilateral. But according to the description of the code in the CPT book, it says, and I'm using the professional book, okay, just so you guys know, it says that you can use a 50 modifier if the injection is done bilaterally, okay? Then there's also 64617, which is the larynx. It also says unilateral and percutaneous injection, right? But it says that you can use the 50 modifier if the injection is done bilaterally, even though the code describes unilateral. Okay. And then we have codes like 64646, which is Botox injection or the chemodenervation of the trunk muscles, 1 to 5 muscles. When you see that, like the 1 to 5, that's when you know you're not going to use any directional modifier. You're not going to use like right or left, and you're not going to use a 50 modifier either, because it's asking for a group of muscles. It wants the documentation for the group of muscles, which muscles, okay? 1 to 5 muscles. So it's not looking for laterality, like right or left, and it's not looking for a 50 modifier if it's done bilaterally. It's asking how many muscles were injected. And even though you may feel tempted, don't do it, because that modifier does not go on codes like that, okay? And same thing with like nail removal. They have like debridement of nail. I think it's 1 to 6. I think the code may read 1 to 6. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But they have nail debridement, and it says 1 to 6. Let's just go with it, okay? And you're not going to use 50 on that one either, even if they did it bilaterally. You're not going to use the individual toe modifiers either, okay? Because it's just asking you how many nails were debrided, okay? And then, of course, the documentation is where it's going to have to show which ones were there, but like which ones were debrided. But when it comes to adding a modifier to that, you don't have to, because it tells you right there in the code. It is just for a set number of however many nails, okay? So something to use to sort of gauge of whether or not you're going to use a modifier. The great thing about encoder is that if a modifier does not go on a code, it'll generally kick it'll throw up an edit and say that this modifier is not necessary for this code, or if you're missing a modifier, it'll ask you, hey, is this done bilaterally? Is this done right or left? You may be able to add a modifier to this. So that's just, one of those things. And then a trick that I learned, and it doesn't always apply because 57 doesn't come up on these when this happens. But when I go to add a modifier, it'll give me a list of like common ones. But the 57 is not so common. So while I may not be able to see it on a common list, it doesn't mean that modifier wouldn't be able to go on a procedure code. You would just have to know what modifier you're looking for, and then be able to add it that way and see if it throws up an error or not. But 57 is like decision for surgery. So, and after a while, you will start to remember which modifiers that you need. There are special circumstances for special instances with certain modifiers. So just be sure to just look over that section. That is the best advice I can give you. Because if you know what you're looking for. Like, for example, with modifiers, they can tell us so many things. Like I said, they can tell us if a procedure is done bilaterally. It can tell us if it's done right or left. It can tell us if it is increased, if the services were increased for this. It can tell us that the services were decreased, it can tell us that a provider started a procedure, the anesthesia was administered, and then they had to stop it, So there's many things that we can learn from modifiers, and that can tell us more of the story, just by looking at the modifier itself. So that's just something to sort of look at. And I know sometimes things don't make sense. It's like, with these codes that say, oh, unilateral, you would think a 50 couldn't go on that. But then the book instructs you that, yes, if it's done bilaterally, then you can. So it really all depends on the code itself. But in terms of like what codes to look at for like for bilateral 50 modifiers, think of like your pair organs, like your eyes, your kidneys. Those are pair organs. And so, just look at those, and just sort of think about those things when you're looking at these codes. And if something is done bilaterally and done in the same session, okay, that's the key right there, done in the same session, then that's when you're looking at those 50 modifiers, So something to keep in mind. But after a while, it will get easier. You will start to recognize which codes, need certain modifiers. You will start to remember those things. So never fear. It may seem like a lot right now, but, it'll start to make sense once you start working with it. And I am preparing already for Quiz Friday. So with that in mind, I am throwing more modifiers on there. I may just throw questions. I'm still debating on that. Because I really like to use things hands-on. Because I think sometimes it sticks better to memory when you use hands-on methods. So just an idea. But yes, I'm going to start talking about one modifier at a time. So 50 is one of my favorite modifiers. And so I just thought I would start with that one first. So, and something else, each one of your fingers and each one of your toes has its own modifier as well. So another thing to keep in mind. But on those, I may do like a whole episode just about like the finger modifiers and the toe modifiers. So that way we don't have to break them down, because it'll take us 20 days to get through all those. I did not mean to say 22. But it'll take us 20 days if we went through each individual, digit modifier. So in the effort of expediency, we will just do 2 episodes about that. So anyway, I hope you guys like that idea. If you are interested in a particular modifier, let me know, and I will put it on the roster to talk about. All right, so I will go ahead and wrap this up because I am getting long-winded. And so if you guys have any questions, be sure to shoot me an email. I will put my email address down in the description box below. And if you have any questions for Q&A Tuesday, be sure to send them on in, because it's never too early to start sending in questions for Q&A Tuesday. I always prepare during the week for Q&A Tuesday. So, all right, so if you are a medical coder, a medical coding student, somebody curious about the fascinating world of medical coding, a provider or a nurse, I invite you to like and subscribe and follow me on my journey in medical coding. All right, well, I will see y'all in tomorrow's episode. Bye!